small congregation down in Williamsburg, Georgia. We had a wonderful choir director. She was very upbeat. She would get up in front of the congregation and introduce the anthem. And she would start out by saying, "Everybody smile." And she would look out over the congregation. And I remember one Sunday morning she called out Harold, and she said, "Harold, you're not smiling." I really enjoyed everything she did except for that part of the service. Because Harold's wife, Helen, suffered from chronic depression. And I had gone with Harold about a week before to visit Helen in a psychiatric hospital. And so, I never did say to my choir director, but that, it might be better not to say that, because sometimes when people come here, they don't feel like smiling. They're hurting. Maybe they're depressed. Maybe they're dealing with grief, or they're just sad. And so I think it's important that, we tend to want to dress up for Sunday morning, put on our best clothes, and sometimes put on our best face and smile when we really don't feel like smiling. So it's important to recognize that we come here with joys that we want to celebrate and share with each other. But just as important, if maybe not more important, is that we come here as a community to share our pain sometimes and our suffering. And that's part of being in a community, that we rejoice with each other, we suffer with each other. And the important thing is for all of you here that you feel that you're part of a community that cares about you, that knows about you and cares about you. And so we take this opportunity all across this country and maybe all around the world, in every Unitarian Universalist congregation, we have this moment we call joys and sorrows. And I think that's so vital to our building a sense of community and belonging here. If you have something that you would like to share with us this morning, a joy, a sorrow, a concern, please no advertisements. And don't sneak it in like I have a joy, I've written a book I want to sell. Somebody, Nick will hand you the microphone. Just raise your hand and give you the mic. Please speak up close so everyone can hear what you have to share. So let's spend the next few moments sharing.
We have a new grandmother in the crowd.
Yes.
Maybe we should hear from her. Tell us about her.
Well, my grandfather clock has been ticking for 3 weeks. I hope it doesn't end up in the corner looking for a buyer. Yeah, but just as Ernie was talking, joys and sorrows, you can, for people who don't know, my only daughter, who's 39, she's out in Oregon, and I was out there for over a month, getting her ready for this baby and seeing the baby and leaving the baby. Just in a matter of seconds, things can change from joys to at least worries, and if not sorrows. And this is not it's not about me, it's just a lesson about life. So my daughter, after a couple days of trying to have this baby, finally has it. We see a picture come through from her husband. They're holding this baby. The next day we find out that that just within minutes after seeing that baby alive on her chest, the doctors said to each other, prepare for a massive. So she lost about 1.5 gallons of blood, which is most of your blood, and they were just ripping open her C-section scar and redoing it, fixing things. And my son-in-law was saying, geez, how can I do this by myself? Raising a baby. So, but the doctors and the team came through, stitched her up, and the next day we saw her, and everybody's been gaining strength ever since. So, yeah, joys and sorrows go together. You never know when things are going to switch. So, yeah. Anyway, everybody's doing great, and I'm sure a bunch of you remember your first grandchild being born, and it's just quite exciting to know that you're a quarter of this person. Anyway, yeah, my grandmother clock will keep ticking. So, thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Any other?
I have a joy to share, although some people may consider otherwise. My wife will be celebrating a birthday tomorrow. And I wanted to wish Elisa happy birthday on the anniversary. A great day on the anniversary of her birth, so happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lisa. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Sally, thank you. Thomas?
Since outreach was mentioned earlier, it brought to mind how pleased I was to hear that World Central Kitchen, who we decided to donate to, is serving meals in Western North Carolina after Helene. And the other joy that relates to that is when I went to outreach for the angel tree to turn it in, she asked what congregation we were with, and I was proud to say it was the Unitarian Universals.
Thank you, Sally. Ellen had her hand up, I believe, didn't you, Ellen? Okay, you were just fixing the camera, okay. Any other, anyone else want to share?
I have a joy, and it's a joy of devotion to our fellowship. And 2 Tuesday mornings ago, a group of guys met at the Polk County Community Library, and we were feeling that we were going to be absent our true leader, Ernie. And lo and behold, we get the meeting started, and Don gets a call on his phone, and guess who called us to be part of the meeting out of his hospital bed the day before the procedure was happening. So thank you, Ernie.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought I was having a second heart attack because I had this sharp pain through here. My blood pressure shot up to 194. So my wife says, get in the car, we're going. So I got there, and the doctors, and then we had to do all this stuff, and then the doctor walks in the room and says, I think you dropped a rock. You dropped a rock. I dropped a rock. You know what that means, right? Okay, the gallbladder with the stones and all that. And next, a couple of days later, they're poking me and pulling it out and all that stuff. I had some good conversations with the nurses. They asked me about Unitarian Universalism, and I told them so. Thank you all for your concerns and your thoughts and energy that you sent up there. Sorry.
And I have a personal joy, and you all were witness to it today. My wife finished her last voice therapy at the Advent Health Polk Hospital therapy place, and she's doing wonderful, as you are witnessing today.
Yes.
Thank you.
May we pause. May our shared silence be a blessing on our hearts, on this community, and may this blessing extend outward to grace the wider world. Join with me, please. We rejoice together, we grieve together as one. Help us to remember that every human heart holds its own joys and sorrows. Let's continue our service with our offerings.
flowing like a river, flowing out for you and me. Flowing out into the desert, setting all the captives free. Sing it with us this time. Joy is flowing like a river, flowing out to you and me, flowing out into the desert, setting all the captives free. Faith. Faith is flowing like a river, flowing out through you and me, flowing out into the desert, setting all the captives free. Love is flowing like a river, flowing out to you and me, flowing out into the desert, setting all the captives free.
Thank you. Join with me, please, the work of this
Fellowship, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action we call community. We dedicate our lives and these are our offerings.
Our reading is William Ellery Channing, number 592. The title is A Free Mind. I call that mind free, which masters the senses and which recognizes its own reality and greatness.
Which passes life, not asking what shall eat or drink, but in hungering, thirsting, and seeking after righteousness.
I call that mind free, which jealously guards its intellectual rights and powers, which does not content itself with a passive or hereditary faith.
Which lowers itself to light whensoever it may come, which receives new truth as an angel from heaven.
I call that mind free, which is not passively framed by outward circumstances and is not the creature of accidental impulse.
Which discovers everywhere radiant signatures of the infinite spirit, and in them finds help to its own spiritual enlargement.
I call that mind free, which protects itself against the usurpations of society and which does not cower to human opinion.
Which refuses to be the slave or tool of the many or of the few, and regards its empire over itself as older than the empire of the world.
I call that mind free, which resists the bondage of habit, which does not mechanically copy the past nor live in its own virtues.
But which listens to the higher positions, which rejoices to pour itself forth in fresh and higher exertions.
I call that mind free, which sets no bounds to its love, which, whenever they are seen, delights in virtue and sympathizes with suffering.
Which recognizes in all human beings the image of God and the rights of God's children, and offers itself up with a willing sacrifice to the cause of humankind.
I call that mind free, which has cast off all fear of that of wrongdoing, in which no menace or peril can enthrall.
Which is calm in the midst of the tumult, and possesses itself of all else is lost.
Okay, thank you. I want want to give you all a chance just for a minute, so we don't take time for my important message. Give you all a minute to respond to that reading. If there's anything in that reading that really jumped out at you, or really spoke to you. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share about that reading? A free mind? I know I've had time to think about it, but you haven't, so. Ron?
The word passive is used twice early in the reading, and it's a kind of an admonition to resist being a passive mind, being shaped too much by the world outside.
Good. Did everyone hear that? Passive mind. A reference to the word passive twice in that reading, yeah. Inga Maya.
Okay.
And Inga, if you could speak up as loud as you can.
Okay. It's easier to read than to be.
It's easier to,
It's easier to read about a free mind and than to be a free mind.
yeah, I heard somebody this morning saying, walking the talk. Walking the talk. Yeah.
You are what you think.
You are what you think. That's a person thinketh, yeah. You know, seldom though we thank you, Nate, and seldom I think that we think about freedom in terms of mental freedom of the mind, because it seems like sometimes we're preoccupied in this country with freedom to be able to do and go and have and possess. And I heard a person at a certain rally, I won't say whose rally it was, but he said, I'm an American, I should be able to do whatever I want. And I think, well, that attitude is, it's very harmful, I think, to that person, not only to that person, but those around them. But seldom, I think, that we think about freeing our minds. And I want to call your attention to the one that struck me. This time it's in that second long column, and it's next to the last part, next to that last phrase, and it says, I call that mind free which resist the bondage of habit. And so habit. What do you think of that? Habit. I think we tend, if we're not careful, to get habitual in our thinking. And I would say there's a big difference between a habit of doing something and as opposed to a habit of thinking the same thing all the time, or either not thinking at all. I mean, we're trying to teach our grandson the habit of brushing his teeth before bed when he gets up in the morning, and we're aiming toward after each meal. We're working that way. That's a good habit to have. So, some habits are good, but I think this habit of this habitual thinking, where we're just sort of thinking in cycles, we're repeating our thoughts, or we've learned something by rote and we're just saying it without really thinking about what we're saying, thinking about the meaning behind the words. So, I think freeing the mind perhaps may be more difficult than freeing the body sometimes, freeing the mind from this habitual way of thinking and getting sort of locked in and sort of closing our minds. We close our minds. So, I would say always keep a little opening in your mind, a little door, and that door has written on it possibilities or imagination or thinking out of the box. So you keep your mind open. So anyway, someone once said there's three kinds of people: people who think, and people who think they think, and people who would rather die than think. So, thinking is anything, but as Rob was pointing out, thinking is anything but passive. Thinking takes energy. Thinking is an activity. Your brain is a muscle, and if you don't use it, it'll atrophy. Okay, where are we? Okay, I want to give you this quote from Plato. It's one of my favorite quotes. I keep it on my phone, on my note apps, and I read it from time to time just to remind me. So there it is for you. One ought not, according to the wise, to go along with this, not with a something or a someone or a mine or a this or a that or with any other name that makes anything stand still. But one ought, in accordance with nature, to utter the names becomings and acted upon and perishing and alterings. Since if anyone makes anything stand still by his speech, the one who does this is easily refuted. I think we need to remind ourselves that we're a whole lot less human beings than we are human becomings. I mean, unless you feel like you're sort of fixed in, and frozen in. And I think that's one of the downsides of our language and our words, is they tend to freeze things and make them stand still. When you think about it, life is constantly changing. We are constantly changing. Change is just life. Life is change. Life is growth. And growth can be painful sometimes. I think when Buddha said life is suffering, he was saying that life is growth, and growth is always painful. Like you just to talk about physical pain, you buy a new pair of shoes when you're 5 years old, and when you're 6, they hurt like hell. Because you've grown, and you say it's time for a new pair of shoes. Well, translate that into our psychological life. Nothing stands still. That we're constantly becoming and changing. And the question behind that is, can we direct that change? Can we change into something that we want to change into, Nelson Mandela was 30 years in solitary confinement on Robben Island. You all know that, right? Nelson Mandela. He had one poster on the wall of his jail cell, and it was, "I am master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." I'm going to change, because life has changed. And I'm determined to guide how I change into something beautiful, into something good. And I'm not just going to leave it up to fate. So, we are human becomings. We're not human beings. We may be beings for a moment. We may be fixed into some habit, And then unfortunately, I think that change often occurs through some kind of crisis in our lives. We won't change until something happens that forces us to change. And it's sad that oftentimes in our culture, that change may occur through some violent act, as we've seen in the past few days. A man gunned down on the streets of New York City. And there's all these different opinions about this, that, and the other, but it's unfortunate, though, sometimes we only change because we're forced to change. We don't have to wait for that to happen. We can begin working on ourselves and our lives right now and determine how we're going to be. And that brings me back to our principles, because our principles are our guide. We are bound together by our principles, but we realize, if we're honest with ourselves, we don't always live up to these principles. But we strive. You know, I think in every single human there's a striving. It's innate within us. We're all striving for something. You know, we're all striving for something. We're striving to live up to these principles. We're striving to live them in ourselves. And I've been saying that over and over, that all of these principles have to start with you and me. They can't be out there, you know. I was telling my grandson the other night, we sang that song, Peace is Flowing. And I said to him, I said, Brian, you know, if peace is flowing in this world, it's flowing out. From what? From you and me. And that's the only place it can flow from. If there's love in the world, it has to come from you and me. If there's acceptance, it has to come. It has to start here. If you don't have it, you can't give it. If you're not free in your own mind, you can't allow another person to be free. If you're harnessed to some dogma or doctrine, and the other person doesn't accept it, then you tend to bow up, you know. Or you may even go so far as to persecute that other person. You know, it's always puzzled me that throughout history, the church has felt the need to torture people or burn people at the stake for the sake of truth. That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if it's true, why do you need to force someone to believe it? If you have to believe something, you're not free to believe it. There's a sign written in stone down at the UU Church in Charleston. If you ever go down to Charleston, South Carolina, big, beautiful church, stone on the outside, and it says, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will
Set you free.
make you free." If it's not the truth, it won't free you. If it frees you, it's the truth. If it binds you, enslaves you, makes you fearful, it's a lie. It's not the truth. Truth will make you free. Which brings me to our fourth principle. And if you want to know that principle, it's in your hymnal, 7 pages in. And it goes like this: a free and responsible truth for searching meaning. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. You're free to seek the truth. And to me, you can't really separate freedom from responsibility. They go hand in hand. Free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So, had just come home from I just was let go from the Marine Corps with an honorable discharge, by the way, which no one's ever asked to see. And I had moved in with my parents, and I was living with my parents, and I would go to church with my mother on Sundays, and after that we'd come home, have lunch, and take a little walk around Osceola Lake in Henderson County, if you know where that is, but we were walking along after church one Sunday morning, and my mother said, she said, "What if all this is not true?" And of course, I knew what she meant by this. She meant, you know, we had just come from church. And so she was asking, really, what if all this Christianity is not true? And I was really kind of shocked because my mother was really a devout Christian woman, I believe, whatever that means, you know. But it really was kind of a shock to me when she was asking that question. And it took me some time to realize that in that question, she really allowed me to be free. She gave me some freedom there to ask that question, what if all this is not true? And so I think, well, if you don't know the implications of it not being true, maybe you don't know the implications of it being true. And I just read something the Pope published last week, and he's criticizing the Catholic Church people for being so kind of comfortable in their churches on Sunday morning, and he goes on and on about that. And I thought, well, why does he have to remind them of who they are? Why do we have to be reminded of who we are? Because somehow we lose the way, But anyway, it took me a while to realize that was my really first experience I can remember of being liberated to ask the question, what if it's not true? And so I consider that a moment of grace. A moment of grace, because grace and freedom are very similar. Grace says you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that. I mean, if you're looking at grace from the biblical point of view, it's, God loves you and it doesn't matter. You don't have to believe this or do that or do this. God loves you. Grace, in the New Testament, Jesus teaches about grace as it makes everybody mad. Because, I've been going to church, paying my tithe, doing this, doing this, doing this, and how come I'm not rewarded when this person over here hadn't done anything? You give that person grace. So grace in the New Testament really ticks people off. Those people won't deserve it. That kind of thing. But grace is an experience of freedom. And so I felt liberated in that moment to not only ask that question, but it opened a door for me at that point in time to become a seeker and to search for the truth. So if you have to believe in something, you're not free to believe it. Freedom to choose is more important than the freedom of what you choose. Let me turn this alarm off. Freedom to choose is more important than what you choose. That you're free to choose it. I mean, whether you choose to be a Christian or a Buddhist or a pagan or whatever, the important thing is that you were free to choose it. You chose it. And the freedom to choose is, if you look up the dictionary definition of heretic, the etymology of the word heretic, it means freedom to choose. So, you and I come from a long line of heretics, some who were burned at the stake. We do. Unitarian Universalist history is full of heretics. And those heretics were the martyrs of religious freedom. Because they paved the way for us to be free. And they paid a cost for that freedom, for us to choose, to be able to choose. So don't forget that. We stand on the shoulders of a lot of men and women who sacrificed so we could be here today and not be afraid to be persecuted. If you're not free to say no to something, you're not free to say yes to it. And this is the way I say it. God would rather have one no made in freedom than 1,000 yeses made out of fear. I'll say that again because I believe in my heart of hearts that God would rather have one no made in freedom than 1,000 yeses made out of fear. Scaring people into faith to me is just really a sad thing when that happens. In 1982, a book fell into my hands, And the title of the book was Modern Man in Search of His Soul. It was by the depth psychologist Carl Jung, and it was all over my head because I didn't understand a bit of it. And by the way, there's a book, Modern Woman in Search of His Soul, written by Marianne Williamson. No, that's not right. Forget that name. It's Modern Woman in Search of His Soul, but you can find the author. But anyway, I was reading, the one part of that book that made complete sense to me and changed my whole perspective was that in one of the chapters, Carl Jung asked the question, what does it mean to follow Jesus? What does it mean to follow Jesus? And here's the answer he gave. To follow Jesus means to live your own authentic life as truly as he lived his. That blew my mind when I read that. And it changed my whole perspective about Jesus Christ. Now that's Jung's opinion. You may have your own opinion of what it means to follow Jesus, because the most popular thought about that is the imitation of Christ. Just imitate Jesus. Whatever that means, copy Jesus. Imitate. Don't think about it, just imitate it. When there's a little bracelet that says, what would Jesus do? And you're supposed to figure out what he would do and try to do that. Whatever it is, Oh, because Jesus took a whip and whipped the people at the temple. I think I'll do that. To live your own life is your own authentic life as truly as he lived his life. That falls back on you and me. It's not about Jesus and how he lived his life and what he would do. It's about, the question is, what would I do if I was living my life from some core in myself? If I was being true to myself. And so I don't see truth as some proposition. I don't see truth as coming to humans through some dogma or some belief or something out there. For me, truth is living, and you and I are that truth. We live, Bonhoeffer says, we don't live at the center, we live from it. So the question is not what would Jesus do, the question is what would I do if I was living the kind of life that is set forth in our principles, or at least I was striving to live that way, what would I do? So to me, when I talk about the search for truth and meaning, is a search for how I am living that truth. Truth is not static. The truth is dynamic. It's moving. That song, the truth is marching on. People say, well, Jesus is the truth. Well, if you read the text, Jesus says, I'll leave you the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will lead you into all truth. Now that's, if you're a Christian, and you believe in the teachings of Jesus. I'm not the truth. I'm giving you the Spirit to lead you into the truth. So we live it. You might be the only truth that anybody ever witnesses. You. When I was in the Methodist Church, I say, you might be the only Bible people ever read. Of course, in UU congregation, I'd say, well, you might be the only Bhagavad Gita somebody might read. Or you might be the only Upanishad somebody might read. You might be the only truth that somebody ever witnesses, especially your children, or your grandchildren, or your neighbors, or your friends, to thine own self be true. One last thing, life has no meaning. The only meaning life has is the meaning we give it. We give it. I don't believe in cosmic blueprint for how we ought to be living. I just don't believe it. Maybe you do, that's fine. But I believe that no matter what life gives you, you can take it and you can make meaning out of it. We make meaning. We give our lives meaning, or we just don't have any meaning. And I'll have to admit that when my daughter died, all meaning went out the window. And I felt depressed and meaningless for weeks. But some spirit said to me, look, you can take this event, you can take this, and you can make meaning out of it. And so what my daughter has been teaching me lately is how to live. How to live each moment, how to take each moment, how to be with the people you're with, and bring meaning to your life. All right, thank you. That was heavy, wasn't it? I'm sorry. My wife says, you get too heavy sometimes. We're going to sing.
Next time, I promise I'll get at least the words. I was kind of still out on the West Coast. But probably you know the words to these closing tunes. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año, felicidad. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. Again. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año, felicidad. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring for you and your kin. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Now bring us a figgy pudding. Now bring us a figgy pudding. Now bring us a figgy pudding and bring cheer. We won't forget we do to you and your kin. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some. So bring some right here. Good tidings we bring to you and your king. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Go your ways, knowing not the answer to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than you know. Okay, does anyone have any comments, queries, or opposing viewpoints before we end our service? Yes, Robin. Can we get her the mic, Nick?
During the whole service, I kept thinking about how if we have to have the ability to accept change, we have to have the ability to listen. And as a communications major, I learned that when you hear in a conversation what somebody is saying, there's all this noise with all your opinions and your past experiences about what that person is saying. And I'm often saying to David, please listen to me and don't finish my sentence with what you think I'm going to say. That ever happened to you? And please don't slam down no what I have to say. Take time to consider it and mull it around before you make your decision.
Thank you, Robin.
Given where the storm hit, I was wondering, does the UU congregation in north of us have any needs that we might address?
Not that I know of, Andy. I think he was asking about the UU church in Asheville and Hendersonville.
Yes.
They're doing fine as far as I know.
Hendersonville is, I just wonder about that.
Yeah, they're doing well. Yeah. Thank you for asking, Andy. Let's stand let's stand and sing this last song, 1, 2, 3, Spirit of Life. Let's extinguish the candle, the chalice, before we do that, though. We extinguish the flame of this chalice. Let us follow the light of truth until we meet again. Sing with me, please. Stand and sing with me. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to thee, come to me. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Kwanzaa, whatever.